Okay. All right. Well, one of the things that I want to do in terms of covering today is we've got the pre-qual script 2 in front of us, and that's more for expireds, for FISBOs, for canceleds. But before we get into that, let's kind of do a little bit of a review here of the listing presentation, because I want to make sure that it's all kind of coming together. So some of the things that we talked about when we do the listing presentation, do you guys remember how it's broken up into the two parts, two main phases? Do you remember phase 1, phase 2, what the difference is between the two of them? Do you remember?
Not right now.
Okay. Well, let's just start off with phase 1 and phase 2, okay? What are the common questions that sellers want to know when they reach out to you about potentially listing their house?
How much?
How much?
How much?
Right,
And
price
your commission,
and commission.
and how long will it take?
How long will it take? That's exactly right. Okay. So price and commission, we always want to have in phase 2. Okay, price, commission, commission's paperwork. Even the market, typically, I've heard it MPP, market, price, and paperwork, right, for phase 2. Phase 1 is going to be choose me. And what we're doing here is we're separating ourselves from the competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're creating the value of why somebody would want to choose me. So just remember, before somebody has decided that they want to hire you, you have to create enough value before you can truly start talking about price, commission, those types of details.
Mm-hmm.
So if we start off with price and commission, we haven't created enough value because we haven't asked enough questions. We don't have an understanding of what it is that that person truly needs, okay? So when we start off, do you remember the very first thing we do for the intro? You guys, does anybody remember the acronym?
Pillars? No.
No, before, we're gonna
Tap.
get to
Was
the
it
pillars.
tap?
Tap, that's right, so tap. So first is tap. Just think tap, then map, okay? So tap is your intro, and do you guys, does anybody remember what it stands for?
Thing.
Thank,
Again?
yep, thank is first.
Acknowledge.
I was
Yep,
gonna say
acknowledge.
acknowledge, I wasn't sure.
Now, always acknowledge, and that could be the house, how beautiful the house is. It could be them for their time, right? That's an acknowledgement. And then P is
Praise.
What's that? Praise. Praise is good, but think of what you want to do. So, okay, so I'll start off this presentation. Thank you all for coming here today. I appreciate you spending a Friday morning of coming out to this morning Ascent. So I'm acknowledging your time. I'm thanking you, coming from a place of gratitude to acknowledge. I promise you that by the end of today, that you will walk away with something of value. I promise you that after we go through this presentation, you're gonna have something that right away you can implement into your business for success. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Great. So that's the introduction, right? So think, acknowledge, and a promise. And the promise is critical as we get into this. So whether you're presenting to a small group, whether you're presenting one-on-one, always remember the top. You wanna thank them, you wanna acknowledge, and then you wanna make a promise, okay? So after that, when I say tap map, map can have an acronym, but it's more for a visual. A map is, we're gonna give a vision, we're gonna cast a vision in terms of what this presentation is gonna look like. It's a blueprint, okay? We got tap first, then we got blueprint. So that's giving a quick overview of what we're gonna cover. So the quick overview is something to the effect of, okay, so first, what we're gonna do is we're gonna discuss what your expectations are in the agent that you look to hire. We're also gonna discuss my expectations and the seller and us working together to successfully get your home sold. I wanna discover what your needs, what your wants are, and expectations, okay? So after we do that, then we're gonna discuss my marketing plan of action, what I do to successfully get homes sold. Number 3, we're gonna talk about the market conditions, where it's been, where it's at, and where it's heading, okay? When we discuss the market together, we're gonna come together with a price based on what's happening in the market. And then if you feel confident and comfortable with what I'm sharing with you, and you would like me to represent you in the sale of your home, we're gonna take care of some paperwork. Does that sound good?
Yes.
So we're given a nice little overview of what we're gonna discuss on the presentation, okay? So that's the blueprint, and we wanna practice that, right? Every time I do that, it's a little bit different, but there's those 4 basic points of what you're trying to hit. So 1, 2, 3, 4. First part truly is discovery. And that's what we're going over today with the pre-qual script 2, okay? Discovery is we have to find out and know exactly what it is that our seller wants. What are they looking for? What are they looking for in an agent? You can ask them the question of, so from your past experience, what have you seen that you like that an agent does? Or what do you believe an agent does to sell a home? And in many situations, the client doesn't know, or they'll say something to the effect of, well, you put it on the internet, we talked about the 3 Ps. Put it on the internet, put it on the MLS, you put a sign out in the yard, and then you pray that it sells, right? So that's what many people believe, that's all we do as agents. When we all know in reality that if that's all we did, it's likely that property is just gonna sit on the market. It takes a lot more, right? So let's get into the 4 pillars. I'm gonna bring those up right now. So you brought up the 4 pillars. So, can anybody remember what any of those pillars are? And the 4 pillars, so after I ask the question to the seller about what it is that you believe an agent does, and sometimes they'll say hold open houses, right? But I really don't know anything else other than putting it on the MLS. Then I'll say, do you mind if I share with you what I do to sell homes? And they could say yes, right? So you can do your plan of action, or you can hit them with these 4 pillars. Because everything we do as agents relates to one of these 4 things. Does anybody remember any of them?
Consult.
Yep, consult, and advise. Okay. Negotiate, that's my favorite one there, right? Negotiate the best terms. You brought up the book earlier, the Chris Voss book, right?
Right.
And I bet you were the first one to tell me about that book a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
So consult and advise, negotiate the best terms. 2 other pillars. Think of coach. That's similar to the consult and advise. Just think of
action, the one? No.
Well, just think of what you do to sell a home, right? Just what is it that you market, right?
Okay.
Market and expose. This is a big one, especially with C21, right? And the international exposure that we have and the reach that we have here. So market and expose is a big one. Open houses, all that's under market and expose. Door knocking, calling, everything we do to market and expose, because we're active agents, right? We're proactive, we don't just wait, we're not passive agents. So that's all in the choose me section of separating yourself from the competition. Okay, number 4, the final one.
I'll take everything until the end, from begin to end, or?
It's oversee the transaction.
Oversee the transaction.
That's exactly, you were on it though. Oversee the transaction. So it could sound something like this. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So what I do is I consult and advise my clients, right? I take the guesswork out of real estate so that we're always a couple steps ahead. So with each one of these, you wanna have 2 supporting facts. Could be whatever it is that you want, but you wanna make sure that you're hitting these 4 pillars through your presentation. And you can set it up early on as you're talking about, what is it that you expect in an agent? And if they're really not sure, you can ask them, well, what do you believe an agent does? And then after they share that with you, they say, may I share with you what I do to sell a home? And then you go through this. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I consult and advise my clients, right? I take the guesswork out of real estate. Number 2, my job is to market and expose your property. The great news is you're deciding to hire Century 21, which is the most recognized name brand for over 40 years, right? We're an international company, and you won't get any more exposure than you will with us in terms of on an international presence. So a lot of times when I'm going through this, I'll ask the sellers at that point, do you know where most cash investors, foreign cash investors, are coming from? And they'll say, if they know, they'll say China. I said, well, we have over 1,500 offices in China. We have over 1,000 in Japan. Your property, when you list with Century 21, goes to Century 21 Global and is translated into over 18 different languages in their currencies and their units of measurement. So, when they're like, really? And this is when, you're really starting to hit. So you'll show through your listing presentation how important it is to expose it at the highest level. And then, number 3, right? My job is to negotiate the best terms. And I gave you a little bit more on the market and expose. We don't want to do that in the presentation. I'm just giving you different ways you can kind of tie it in, right? So number 3, it's to negotiate the best terms. It is my duty, it's my stewardship to protect your equity, your hard-earned equity that you built in your property, okay? Number 4, my job is to oversee the transaction. In overseeing the transaction on a national average, you have to sell each home twice. And we all know, based on what happened in the market last year, many properties fell out of escrow. what were the reasons for those falling out? We can talk about that in our presentation, okay? So not only do you have to sell each home twice, it also takes on average about 150 phone calls from the very first time we're speaking to a successful close where we're handing the keys to a buyer. So now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would you see any value if an agent did any of those things for you, right? And then just somebody could play along. Would you see any value in that, Betty?
Yes.
You would. What is it that you like specifically? What was your favorite out of the four things that I mentioned?
Well, I mean, they're all great. I just, like that you are knowledgeable enough to know how to go through those steps and make the best, transaction.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so, and what I'll do is I'll ask them, okay, so what is it that you liked about what I shared? And typically they'll say, I really like marketing experience or something. You said the whole thing, which is great, right? Because you like the clear vision and understanding of leading somebody through the process, which is also what our clients appreciate and respect as well. So when I ask them specifically marketing, and they say marketing and expose, I'll say, tell me a little bit more about what you're looking for marketing and exposure. They said, well, I really like the international presence and the fact that you have so many offices in China. I think that's great as well to increase our chances that we could get an all-cash investor coming from China, right? So they can tell you specifically, and as they're telling you, and you're asking them the questions, they're committing towards, your leadership and you leading them through the process, okay? So those are the four pillars. What are the two fundamental beliefs we need before we go to a presentation? This is in regards to mindset. There's two things that every agent has to believe before they show up for the listing presentation. What are those beliefs?
Well, knowing that you're the right one for the
Right agent for the job? So number one agent, okay? Right for the job. You're the best. You're not second best, right for the job. You are the best, okay? Number two, second belief.
knowing their goal or no?
Knowing that you can get the job done.
Okay.
This is confidence in your job and what it is that you do, of knowing, number one, you're the best agent for the job, and two, that you can get the job done, that you can successfully sell the home. So those are the two things you have to know going into any listing presentation. And if you don't believe those, you might as well not show up, because they're gonna sense that and understand that, and it is likely that you're not gonna connect and be able to lead them through the process. So those are the two fundamental beliefs. Okay, so getting back, so now we did the top, we did the map, we went through, so discovery I said first, which we're gonna get back to the prequel. Number two was gonna be plan of action. And there is a plan of action in your C21 Everest Building a Team of Excellence book. There is a plan of action in there. We're gonna go over that in a future one as well, which is very nicely laid out. There's an actual just plan of action where it goes line by line. Then there's another one that's got a little bit more content and explanation. So there's actually two different things to look at in that Everest book. Number three is we're gonna talk about the market, like we said, where it's been, where it's at, where it's heading, and finally, it's paperwork. If you feel confident and comfortable, that I can list your home. Okay, so those are the four things in the blueprint. Then typically, after we're going through all the discussion and we have a really good connection and we're at a good place with them in the presentation, what do we wanna do before we move over to talking about price?
The market?
To ask them if there's any questions about what you went over, or?
You can, but it's what we're doing now it's the temperature gauge question, okay? And what that is this is getting a feel for where everything's at. So an example of that, so I know we're at a good place in the presentation. I've identified what it is they're trying to accomplish. I can tell they're motivated to sell their home. I can tell that they have a good rapport with me and understanding that I know the market, that I'm, suited to represent them in this. So now I could ask them just as simple as, so how do you feel about what I just shared with you so far? Just as simple as that, right? How do you feel about where we're at right now? Are we on the right track? These are all questions, temperature gauge questions, to see if they say, no, you're phenomenal, this is amazing, so much better than, I've never heard a presentation like this. Had no idea, I just thought you were gonna come in and talk to us about the price. you've done, I mean, you've already laid it all out in terms of what it is that you do to sell a home, right? So if they get to that strong, now you're ready to go to pay for it. Hey, Lisa. Come on in. We're just, okay. So basically, from that point on the temperature gauge question, that's typically when I'll say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being 100% confident, and 1 being 10% confident that you would like to hire me to list your home. Where are you at today? Where are you at?
100%.
You're at 100%, okay. Let's take care of some paperwork. Where are you at? On a scale of 1 to 10.
I still think we should talk about the price.
Okay, so talk about the price, but on a scale of 1 to 10, from what we've covered so far, where are you at that you would feel confident that I can list and sell your home?
Oh, yeah, close to 100%, yeah.
Okay, you're close to 100. So somebody give me a lower number, please. Betty, where are you?
75.
You're at a, so you're at a 7.5, 75%. Well, thank you. I appreciate your honesty. And, so, you know, I want you to be 100% confident that I'm the right person to list and sell your home. So what is it? Where's the hesitation?
Well, we have a couple of other agents that are gonna come and meet with us.
Wonderful. So you're gonna meet with a couple of other agents. That's great. And you know, just in terms of what I've shared with you so far, what is it that you're hesitant in getting started today, other than, you know, the other couple of agents that you're looking at meeting with?
Well, I haven't heard what price you're gonna put on our house,
Okay.
or what your commission is.
Okay. So if price and commission make sense, then would you feel confident in everything else working out, or is there anything else that you have hesitation with?
Well, I still have appointments with these other two agents.
Right, so you've already set the appointments with the other two
Yes,
agents, great. And so, if we worked everything out and you felt confident that I am the right person to represent you in selling your home, would, you know, where would the hesitation be at that point? Just in terms of, you know, you have those appointments set, is it just, you know, being uncomfortable in terms of calling them to cancel those appointments, is that?
Well, yeah, that's a little embarrassing, cause one of the agents was referred to me by, a friend.
By a good friend,
Mhm.
okay, and, okay, that's great. So what I'm gonna try to do at that point, basically first of all, just to explain what I'm doing is I'm isolating the objection, okay? I'm trying to find out and discover, okay, where are all the challenges? So what do we know so far? We know she has 2 more appointments set. We know that one of them comes recommended by a friend, right? So that's the friend objection. You know, could get to that. I'm also trying to discover if she just feels uncomfortable canceling those other 2 appointments that she set. And if we get to a great place, my solution's gonna be, if you'd like, I'd be more than happy to call those 2 people on your behalf, right?
I was waiting for you.
Right? Right. So we can find ways to take that pressure off, and then also explain to them how it works. I mean, we recently just had a buyer that didn't realize that all agents had access to the MLS. They thought each agent only had access to their particular listings, right? So a lot of this is just, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So that's part of where we have to have that discussion and kind of dig deeper and find out, not be afraid to hear that she's got 2 other appointments, you know, find out, and if she's willing to share who it is and what companies they're with, and
I was just gonna
Right.
ask you, if you would ask who they were.
Right.
Only because if the friend that referred an agent isn't even from around the area.
absolutely.
You know.
So we always wanna dig as deep as we can, but we gotta be very careful we don't come off as interrogating or questioning. You never wanna make the client wrong, right? So one thing we can do is just acknowledge, well, this is a very important decision. So I understand that you're doing your due diligence in terms of interviewing multiple agents, right? Because it is a very important decision. So you can acknowledge that and then dig a little bit deeper. So you didn't make them wrong, right? By acknowledging it's good for you to check with these other agents. Do you mind sharing with me which companies these agents work for? So you can start with that. Or you can say something to the effect of, you know, do you mind, come on in. That's a bit. Do you mind sharing with me? Here you go. How you doing? Good, good to see you. Where they come, you know, which agents are you referring to? And then also, how were you referred these people, or how did you find those agents? So sometimes they found them on Zillow, sometimes they found them there, and then the next thing that I can do, if I'm gonna try to do a 2-part listing appointment, and that's another thing, is I can say something to the effect of, would you like some information, like a report card on each agent, so that you can see what it looks like in terms of, you know, my past sales versus these other agents? Would that be helpful in you making your decision? And a lot of times they'll say, that'd be great, right? So then you can print that out and then share that with them as well. So what you wanna get to, what I found a lot of times when it comes up that, okay, we have a couple other people that we still wanna interview, more of that is keeping you at a certain distance, cause they don't wanna commit right at the end of this, especially if I'm coming pretty strong with my blueprint. You know, when I'm given the vision and casting the vision and saying at the end of this, if you feel confident and comfortable that I can sell your home, you know, we're gonna take care of some paperwork. It's very likely that you're gonna hear their objection where they're gonna say, well, I have 2 more appointments that are already set. They're trying to be, well, I don't wanna waste your time, just wanna be very clear. If somebody comes highly recommended, you know, but I've heard good things about you as well, and you also come recommended, but I promised my friend that I would sit down and talk to them beforehand. So they said, no, I understand that and I respect your loyalty, right? So if you're comfortable with it, when do you meet with your friend? And I'm gonna find out the time, right? Well, we're supposed to meet with them Thursday at 2 o'clock. So what I've heard Russ teach, which is, I mean, this is, you talk about just really putting the pressure. He says, okay, well, let's meet at 2:30. He's shortening their time. Let's set it up at 2:30 and shorten it up. And then he wants to make sure he's the last one to meet with that person. I haven't come that strong yet, but what I'll do is I wanna make sure I'm the last person to meet with them before they sign and say, look, I'm not gonna ask you to sign the paperwork at the end of today. So I understand that you have these commitments, but I'm gonna leave it with you. And I ask that you keep it all confidential, just out of respect, right? In terms of, you know, what I've offered. And Russ will also hold off on giving the price until they've chosen him. So he won't give them the price. He said, look, now if you go to a doctor who specializes in brain surgery, who's been doing this for 15 to 20 years, right? And you meet with them at an initial consultation, they're not gonna give you everything that they know in terms of how to successfully price and sell your home. So he's gonna make sure that they have chosen him before he's gonna get into his pricing strategy. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, we think that we need to give everything out. We don't need to give everything out. We need to ask good questions. We need to really understand where they're at. And if they're still going to hold off in terms of, you know, committing to us or feeling confident with us, we don't need to give out all the secret sauce. You don't need to lay it all out, and it's challenging to do that. What I have found more so is I typically will give the information, leave my paperwork with them, and trust. And it was one of the things I heard from George a long time ago and you guys have heard this at least once or twice from me, is persuasiveness is long lasting, lasts a long time. Manipulation is very short term, right? Manipulation is when somebody feels that you're taking advantage of them, so they get buyer's remorse or seller's remorse, and they just signed a contract. It's like, wait a minute, what did I just do? Because they felt manipulated. So, and the difference between them is the intent of the person. That's it. It's the exact same skill set, to manipulate or to be persuasive. Persuasive is what's in their best interest. So when they truly know that everything that you're sharing with them is in their best interest and they feel that sincerity, that is gonna be very long lasting. So I've done it where it's like, okay, I know it was a great presentation. I left the paperwork with them. I know that I have other competitors coming, and I know that call's coming back to me. And it's like, sometimes you gotta just have that confidence and just leave it and say, look, I understand this is a tough decision. I understand you have these commitments. You know, I'm here for you. I'd like to meet with you. You said your last appointment's Thursday at 2 o'clock. If we can get together Thursday at 4 o'clock, or, you know, that'd be great. And then we'll sit down and discuss everything that's been shared with you. And then you can make your decision at that point. But just as if I'm not asking you to sign the paperwork now, I hope you give me that same respect and meet with me one last time after you meet with everyone. Would that be fair enough? Yes, right? So you're already thinking of the objections, the reasons, the excuses of why they aren't committing or going to commit, and affirming that that's okay. And then we're gonna move to this. Or you can go a little bit more hard, you know, in terms of the pressure of, hey, look, you know, I need to know you're committed now before we move to the next. But I know personally how I feel when somebody gives me that type of ultimatum, and it typically doesn't work. That's not my style and how I've approached it. So, yeah, come on in. Sorry. Can we just get one more chair set up? Okay, I guess we should have set up out there. So last week, yeah. So, okay, so does that all make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. This temperature gauge is one of the critical, most important pieces in the presentation once you know you've gotten to a good place. And that's asking a question just in terms of, and we got this recorded, I'm gonna have it on our private link, so just asking where they feel in terms of what we presented so far, okay? So it's very important to get to that before we get into the price and the commission. And then just in terms of pricing, you know, it's your typical CMA. I've seen it done many different ways. For me, I always have the 3 top sales. So I wanna make sure that I know if it's a particular model, that I know the highest sale that's happened. And they say six months for appraisals, right? But I'm going back usually a year and a half, and I wanna know what that top sale is. You never want to not know what the highest sale in the area is, because if the client knows and you don't know that, that's not good. So make sure you know that before you show up. Also, take some of the pressure off of yourself if you do a 2-part presentation. And what I mean by that is you can have numbers set up before you go into the place. Then after you see the place and you see it's much nicer than what you even anticipated, you can tell them that, okay, look, your home is beautiful, you've done a lot to it, I wanna make sure that I'm giving you all the appropriate value. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back, run some more searches, and make sure that we've looked at all the data. I've done this preliminary search and this is what I'm seeing so far, but now after being in here, I actually think we can get higher than the comps are showing, right? And that's what, this is another way to differentiate yourself between the competition, because many will just base just off the comps and the CMAs, and they're a little scared to go a little bit higher, right? Others, and I know you, you got some to share, others know how, because the value is what a buyer sees in the property, right? Sometimes they can overcome appraisals. Sometimes the demand is so strong that there's other things that you can do. Go ahead, Ben.
So I just lost a $700,000 listing.
Okay.
It's in a senior community that has high demand, but there's the last sale of that model, which I sold last year, was $513,000.
Oh, wow.
And he wanted $700,000 and said, if it doesn't sell in 2 months, I'm gonna rent it out.
Right.
So knowing and coming from a analytical side because of being an appraiser, I told him I'd rather disappoint you now than disappoint you later. We would only be able to get a specific buyer that would be willing to overpay for your property when I looked in all of Camarillo, there is no house that's under 1,300 square feet that is sold for $700,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I had to make a business decision for myself because I do invest a lot in my listings.
Absolutely.
Well, he listed it, and before it even got into MLS, it had already sold.
Wow.
And so,
Yeah.
I don't know how it's gonna play out, obviously. I mean, there could be
Still gotta appraise it, still have to, there's still repairs, there's still many different things that can happen.
Yeah.
So you never know, but good job on sticking to your guns, because more times than not, our clients need leaders that are guiding them in the right direction. And most agents aren't strong enough to be able to walk away from business. And when you negotiate the way that you did, even when it doesn't work out, that's typically in your best interest. For time, for money, for commitment, for your energy, on everybody else who is following your lead. And that's part of what we'll talk about in the presentation, if there's that big of a challenge. But what I've found is when you come in, with everything, and I'm sure you did, especially having an appraisal background, and you show them the market, you show them the risk and what can happen. So not only do I have the 3 solds, I'm also gonna show 3 canceled expireds. And I'm gonna show this is what you don't wanna do. Look at where they started in price. Look at the pictures that are on this property. Look at how they're trying to market this home, right? I mean, sometimes it's a discounted commission on top of that. So I'm gonna highlight everything that went wrong with why this home didn't, why it sat for 120 plus days. And show, and know those numbers coming in. And usually by the time we get to that, when we settle, and then I'll ask them, even if they tell me a higher price. And that's another thing in the pre-qual that we're talking about. Don't be afraid to ask, what price do you have in mind? Okay, always ask that question. And I used to be afraid to do it because sometimes you get, 700,000, right? 700K, and it's like, oh, now I got that. Well, now you know what you're up against. So you heard it, you heard the question up here, you didn't try to battle it up here. You went all the way through the presentation so that they truly saw what your value is before you get to that. and then we start talking about it, and then if we need to stand our ground, we have to walk away.
Yeah.
We've gotta be willing to.
Something
Yeah.
I think is really important when you're going through the CMA is
Uh-huh.
pointing out which properties have been staged.
Right,
So that they can see the value of decluttering
absolutely.
and, how they're gonna get more money.
That's beautiful, that's a great example. So what we're gonna do now, just before we get into this, I wanted to do the overview to make sure that some of this stuff is really sinking in, especially the 4 pillars, right? The 2 fundamental beliefs. So real quick, just a reminder, 4 pillars: consult and advise, market and expose the property, negotiate the best terms, oversee the transaction. Yes, sir.
Do you share with them that you're planning to advise them on their best interest, market and expose, negotiate, or is that just something you do like step by step in your head?
So, great question. So sometimes I'll literally go through the 4 pillars. Other times, as we're going through the presentation, as we do discovery, and they tell me what it is they're looking for, now I'm pulling in, they're called sound bites, right? I pull in the sound bites, the market and expose, based off what they're sharing with me in the discovery. So it all depends. Every presentation is a little bit different. And the more that you have a good understanding of how this works, you can pivot based on what's happening. And you can tell walking into that presentation, that's one of the very big first things is reading, right? You can tell if the tension level is high. If the tension level is high, you can't just go straight through this presentation. You gotta find a way and you gotta talk about something. You gotta ask a question and get them to open up some. And if they're not, then call a spade and just say, hey, look, I understand that this is a stressful process, right? I understand that this is a difficult decision. Can you share with me what's concerning you? Just ask them and just see what they say. Well, you know what? I have a friend who I promised that I would see them, and I'm just worried that you're gonna have me sign this paperwork. Right out the gate, I'm gonna already hear what their biggest concern and their hesitation is. So the more that we do that, we can pivot based on it. But it's not, because there was one presentation when I went through the 4 pillars, and I totally know I sounded like a salesman and just went through it, and it was just like, all right, salesman in a negative sense. It didn't sound sincere, right? And that was the first time I ever felt that. And this was somebody I knew, and I was like, wow. Usually after I do that, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard anything like that, right? Because it's just so clean to the point, and just you're leading them through the process. So you'll see. You gotta kind of be able to pivot. Yes, ma'am.
So one of the things that I started doing too is going to all the websites
Uh-huh.
and writing down what Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, etc. have for the value of their home.
That's good.
So when you're going over price,
Mhm.
they can see that, even though those are not accurate, but it helps you to come up with a better conclusion.
It does, and it's something that can give you a little bit of insight of what the seller is likely to be thinking, right? Because, sometimes they're putting all their emphasis on Zillow, which can, in some situations, help you, some situations hurt, but you don't know until you ask the question. So that's one of the biggest things that, again, early on, I would never ask, what price are you looking for? Because it's like, all right, in my head, every seller's gonna want a ridiculous amount. In my head, you can't assume those things, right? A recent one that I know that I'm speaking with them, the seller is very realistic with his price. And it was so comforting to hear it. After we go through the whole place, and I said, do you have a price in mind? He said, yeah, $550. I was like, wow, because this place is beautiful, 4-bedroom, 2 baths, 1,600 square feet, in a good area, off of Victoria and Woolley, in that area, Seaview Estates, 550, 1,600, and it's clean. I mean,
Offshore.
it's, yeah, you already
I know.
You already
I know.
You know which property, so offshore. Yeah, so it's, but no, it's gonna be a great home at that price. And then as he said that, I was just like, wow, thank you, So you don't know. But in my head, I could have been thinking other numbers, I could have, all these other things, and you don't know until you ask that question, okay? So that's the big thing. So let's go to the pre-qual script 2. And I'm gonna erase this. If anybody wants to take a quick picture of this, you guys are welcome to. Are you guys good? Okay.
I'll take a picture.
Can I do it? Just the rough outline, but that's a good way to organize your presentation. Didn't get into the closing, but it's just pricing, commission, and then whatever you do for your close. And there are a few closing strategies in that book as well. One called the ultimate close. There's another one called the 3 no close. And it's just, something to the effect, would you have any issue with listing your home with Century 21? They say no. Would you have any issue with listing your home with me? No. Would you have any issue in starting the paperwork tonight? No. People like to say no. You gave them 3 no's, start the paperwork, right? So that was actually George's favorite close, is the 3 no close. Then there's an ultimate close, which gets more benefit specific. So as, like you asked on the 4 pillars, what is it that you like? They say, well, I really like your marketing and exposure. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. You're getting in on the benefit, and when you can tell that they truly want that, okay, well, would you feel comfortable with getting started today? Let's go, right? So you focused on the benefit. It's a benefit close. So this here is the pre-qual script. So as we set the appointment, I've done this before, but say the appointment is at Friday at 4 o'clock. Just wanna make sure that this is clear. This is, you master the skill of pre-qual, you are gonna do very well in this business in many different ways. It's all about getting information, right? So not only for your clients to know the answers to the test, right? Your presentation is the test. So if you're prepared and you know a lot of this information, you're able to get this beforehand, it's much more likely you're gonna pass the test when you meet with them Friday at 4 o'clock. So when we call on Thursday, we try not to text, especially if we have an amiable, right? When we call on Thursday to do that, what is the pre-qual, just the initial conversation sound like? Without going through the whole script. Has anybody done one before, pre-qual?
Motivation or?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna find, but just what,
Over the phone?
yeah, just over the phone. How would you
I'm
start it?
I'm so excited, Brendan, to meet you today at 6. Just have a couple, one question to ask you. Would you mind passing now?
Perfect. So that's good. So what you wanna do something of is, you're gonna acknowledge the appointment. So say something to the effect of, ring, ring, and you'll be the seller on the other side, okay? Ring, ring.
Hello?
Hi, is this Jesus?
Yes,
Hey, Jesus, this is Brandon Ramey with Century 21. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Great, great. Well, I'm really looking forward to meeting you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Will you and your wife be there tomorrow?
We sure are, yeah. We're excited to meet you.
Awesome, awesome. Looking forward to meeting you as well, and I want to make the most out of our appointment tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Do you got a few minutes to go over a couple things?
I do.
Awesome, right? So something like that is the intro. We're confirming the appointment. I want to make the most out of our meeting tomorrow, right? So I got a few questions for you. So you're earning the right to ask questions. And then as we go through the questions, now let's continue it here, okay? So you're gonna be our homeowner here, and I'm just gonna be reading literally word for word off this script here, okay? You guys ready? Okay, ring, ring. We'll just start over again. Ready?
Yeah.
Ring, ring.
Hello?
Hi, is this Jesus?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Jesus, this is Brandon Ramey with Century 21. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Well, before we get together tomorrow at 4 o'clock, just wanna make sure you and your wife will both be there?
Yes, we will. Yeah, we'll be here.
Wonderful. And before we get together tomorrow, I wanna make sure we get the most out of our meeting. Do you got a few minutes for a couple questions?
Sure.
Wonderful. Okay, so Jesus, do you mind telling me, how long have you been trying to sell your home? So this is an expired or a FISBO, okay?
Got it. Yeah, it's been over 6 months now.
Oh, wow, it's been over 6 months. Okay, help me understand, what made you decide to sell this home?
Well, just, seeing that the market's doing a lot better and we might just be moving to Arizona.
Okay, so you're seeing the market improve, and you're looking to potentially move to Arizona. Anything in Arizona taking you out that way?
Well, I could buy a lot more there that I can buy here.
Oh, you definitely could get a lot more bang for your buck out there, for sure. Do you have any family or friends out there in Arizona?
Yes I do. Close to Phoenix.
Wonderful, close to Phoenix. So is that where you're looking?
Yes,
And do you have an agent that's helping you with that purchase yet?
I do.
Great, great. So have you already gone out and checked out some homes?
Just online, really.
Okay, just online, but
Yeah.
you're in conversation with an agent out there.
Correct.
And sounds pretty professional?